I think you just did a really eloquent job explaining why you think a paradigm shift has just happened, both in inflation, globalization, et cetera. Do you think when the historians look back in 10, 20 years, 2022 is going to be the year that marks that shift?
Absolutely. I think what we've seen is a generational bottom in the commodities to stocks ratio. I think it's a generational bottom in interest rates that we saw in 2020. And these are things that play out over a very long time frame. They're not things that are 6 to 18 month trade. They're multi years, 5 to 10 year trends, and if not longer. And we can talk a little bit more about the inflation dynamics, but I think what people are missing when it comes to inflation is, yes, there are cyclical forces. Yes, the money printing exacerbated the underlying problem, but and the pandemic did as well. But there was already a trend towards de-globalization. Globalization is probably one of the most disinflationary forces of
Our
for
lifetimes.
many years, at least our lifetimes, if not bigger. Pair that with demographics, right, where you had the baby boomers coming into the workforce right at the right time. Labor supply expanded dramatically, which put a lid on labor costs for a long period of time. And now the baby boomer generation is leaving the workforce, and so we're seeing this is something the BIS published a piece on demographics and inflation 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a very important piece to pay attention to, because it showed when you have a rising dependency ratio, it's essentially the workforce is shrinking relative to the overall size of the population. It's almost always inflationary, and in a very big way. And this is something, that demographic trend that has been growing for a number of years. And so we're seeing rising dependency ratio in most countries around the world now, but especially in the United States, where and if you read Goodhart and Pradhan's recent book, The Great Demographic Reversal, they do a great job of taking this information the BIS put out 3-4 years ago and really doing a deep dive in it, and showing how when you have the productive members of society shrinking versus non-productive members who are still consumers, right? Retirees, they're not producing anything, they're just consuming. That's very inflationary. And so demographics, we have this demographic inflationary shift, and pair that with de-globalization, which is going to raise the cost of production significantly. Those two trends probably just by themselves represent a very important inflationary dynamic on a long-term time frame, which means this disinflationary trend that we've seen since the early 80s is now over. It's really, and we're now in a systemic inflationary environment that will last a long period of time.
All right, well, you heard it here, folks. 2022, the year it all changed. If you enjoyed this video clip, click here to watch another one you should like.